You know, I've always believed our bodies talk to us. The trouble is, we're not always listening. One morning not long ago, I stepped outside just like I do every day. Coffee in hand, slippers on, birds chirping like usual. It was peaceful, until it wasn't. As I bent down to pick up the newspaper, a sudden wave of lightheadedness hit me. The world spun just a little, just enough for me to freeze. I chuckled nervously. Guess I stood up too fast, I whispered to myself. But inside, I felt a flicker of worry. This wasn't the first time I'd felt off. A few days earlier, I noticed a strange numbness in my fingertips, then my left cheek felt tingly during lunch. Nothing big. Nothing dramatic. But something wasn't right. I'm 76 years old. I've survived a heart attack, managed high blood pressure, and adjusted to life after 60 with more gray hair and a bit less spring in my step. But I've also learned that stroke symptoms don't always come with sirens and flashing lights. Sometimes, they knock quietly, and we ignore the knock. What I didn't realize at the time was that I had likely experienced a transient ischemic attack, a mini-stroke. They call it transient because the blockage in the brain clears on its own. But don't be fooled by the word mini, it's anything but small. A TIA is your brain's version of a fire drill. It's warning you that a real fire, a major stroke, might be coming next. Statistics show nearly 240,000 Americans suffer from mini-strokes each year. And here's the scary part, 1 in 5 will go on to have a full stroke within just 90 days. When I learned that, I sat quietly on my porch for a long time. Not because I was afraid, but because I had almost let something pass that could have changed my life forever. And I don't want you, or anyone you love, to make the same mistake. That's why I'm telling this story today. Not as a doctor. Not as an expert. But as someone who's been there. Someone who cares enough to say, pay attention to what your body whispers. In this video, I'll walk you through the 8 often overlooked signs of a mini-stroke. Subtle symptoms that can happen in the days, or even weeks, before a bigger event. And the truth is, many of these signs get mistaken for tiredness, aging, or just one of those days. But recognizing them early can change everything. It might save your independence. It might save your speech. It might just save your life. So grab your tea or coffee. Settle in with me. And let's talk, like neighbors, like family, about what really matters when it comes to senior health tips, heart health, and protecting those golden years we've worked so hard for. And if you're watching this because you're caring for someone over 60, thank you. Your vigilance could be the reason they get the help they need in time. If any part of this story hits close to home, or if you believe this message could help someone else, please take a second to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. We're building a community here, a place for honest, clear health advice for seniors, from one generation to another. Let's begin. Let's start with something that seems small, but can mean everything: dizziness. I remember one morning, my old neighbor George came over. He's 81, a retired trucker, and tougher than a $2 steak. But that day, he wasn't himself. He sat down real slow and said, "Harold, I got dizzy just walking to the mailbox. Thought the world was spinning." Now, George isn't one to complain. So I listened carefully. That kind of dizziness, out of nowhere, no explanation, no alcohol or meds involved, that's a red flag, especially after 60. Dizziness or balance issues are often the result of decreased blood flow to the back of the brain. And they're among the most overlooked mini-stroke symptoms. It might last only a minute, or 5. But even a transient ischemic attack can cause your brain to send out subtle SOS signals like this. So here's the rule: if you suddenly feel off balance, like you might fall, don't wait it out. Get checked. Now let's talk about numbness or drooping, especially on one side of the body. Years ago, when I was still teaching, I had a student whose grandma came in for Grandparents' Day. Sharp as a tack, warm as sunshine. But that day, she smiled, and only the right side of her mouth moved. She didn't even notice it. But we did. When there's numbness in the face or limbs, when an arm feels heavy, or a leg won't lift right, that's not just age. That could be a blockage forming in the carotid artery, reducing oxygen to part of the brain. This is where a quick at-home test helps. Ask the person to raise both arms. If one arm drifts or can't move, it's time to use the fast stroke test and call for help. Now, the third sign might surprise you: trouble speaking or even vision problems. Ever had someone suddenly slur their words? Mix up common phrases? Or say things that just don't make sense? That's not just tiredness. It could be aphasia. A disruption in the brain's language center due to transient ischemia. The same goes for sudden blurry vision or seeing double. When the visual cortex isn't getting enough blood, perception gets scrambled. One subscriber recently shared that her mother misread a stop sign and couldn't finish a sentence the next day. Doctors later found she'd had a mini stroke, and it could have been much worse. So if your speech becomes tangled or your eyesight suddenly shifts, don't wait for it to clear up. That's your brain begging you to listen. Remember, these symptoms don't stick around long. That's what makes them dangerous. The clot can dissolve, and everything seems fine. But underneath, the risk is building quietly. If you've seen any of these signs in yourself or someone else, tell me in the comments. Sharing your story could help someone recognize a warning before it's too late. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like this video. It tells YouTube this is information worth spreading to other families, other caregivers, and people who might need it tonight. Let's keep going. The next signs are even easier to miss, and even more important to catch. Let's move on to something a little trickier, something that creeps in silently: inability to concentrate. A few months ago, my friend Martha called me. She was worried about her husband, Carl. Said he'd been forgetting simple things, like where he put his glasses or what he had for breakfast. Now Carl's a sharp guy. Worked as an engineer for decades. But lately, during their evening card games, he'd pause mid-sentence, like he was chasing a thought he couldn't catch. He said it was just normal aging. But Martha knew better. Turns out, Carl had experienced a mini-stroke. And the reduced blood flow had impacted his short-term memory and focus, classic symptoms of a transient ischemic attack. Here's the thing: when oxygen and nutrients don't reach parts of your brain, even briefly, your cognitive clarity can fog up like a windshield in winter. It's not always dramatic, but it's not nothing either. If your mind starts to feel sluggish, if conversations get harder to follow, or if you're struggling with focus in a way that feels new, don't brush it off. These moments may be small, but they often lead to something much bigger. And that brings me to another tough one: confusion. I remember this one all too well. My cousin Eleanor, bless her heart, called me one Sunday morning, sounding scared. Her husband, Ray, had walked into the kitchen, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "Where are we going for church?" The thing is, they hadn't been to church in 5 years. Then he asked her what year it was. Eleanor thought maybe it was a sugar crash or a bad dream. But deep down, she was scared, and rightly so. Ray was rushed to the ER. Doctors told her he'd likely had a mini-stroke, and the confusion was a result of a temporary blockage near the brain's memory center. He was lucky. He got treatment fast. Confusion after stroke isn't just being forgetful, it's disorientation. You forget names, places, even faces. It may seem random, but it's your brain waving a white flag. The sooner you act, the more brain function you can preserve. Here's another one many people ignore: the sudden onset of a severe headache. We've all had headaches, sure. But there's a difference between a tension headache from a long day, and a thunderclap of pain that comes out of nowhere. That's what happened to Helen, one of our church choir ladies. She thought it was just a migraine. Took 2 aspirin and lay down. By the time her daughter came to check on her, Helen couldn't speak. She was having a silent stroke, and that headache was the brain's alarm bell. Pain that is sudden, severe, and unlike anything you felt before should never be ignored. It might be linked to a carotid artery blockage or even a risk of hemorrhagic stroke. Remember, a mini stroke can cause these intense headaches, too, even if it clears up quickly. If any of this sounds familiar, don't wait. Tell someone. Talk to your doctor. Or better yet, share this video with someone who's been brushing off these signs. And if you've ever had one of those off days that just didn't feel right, maybe now you'll know what to do next time. The signs are stacking up. But there's still more to know. The next symptoms are rare, but when they happen, they're often missed completely. So stay with me. Let's talk about something most people never expect: fainting. Now I've fainted once in my life. I was 14, working summers at my uncle's farm in Iowa. Overworked, underfed, and stubborn as ever. But when it happened to my friend James last year, it wasn't from heat or hard labor. It was a mini stroke. James had been feeling a little tired that week, nothing unusual. But while walking to his kitchen, he suddenly collapsed, out cold for just a minute or two. Paramedics came, ran tests. It wasn't a heart attack. Turns out, it was syncope, a brief loss of consciousness caused by a transient ischemic attack that cut blood supply to his brain. And that's what many don't realize. These fainting episodes, when unexplained, especially in people over 60, can be stroke symptoms. The brain depends on a constant blood supply, and even a momentary interruption can knock out consciousness. If you or a loved one ever faints, especially with other signs, confusion, vision problems, or slurred speech, call 911. Better a false alarm than a life-changing delay. Another sign that's often misinterpreted in the elderly is hallucinations. This one's hard to talk about. When my late Aunt Ruth began seeing things, a dog in the hallway, a man at the window, we thought it was just age, maybe even dementia. But her neurologist told us something surprising: hallucinations can happen after a mini stroke, particularly if it affects the brain's visual processing or memory centers. It can also be an early sign of vascular dementia, which is more common after repeated silent strokes. That shook me. We expect physical signs from a stroke, numbness, slurred speech, but mental signs like this are just as real. If someone begins seeing or hearing things that aren't there, don't dismiss it. Don't assume it's just old age. It could be their brain's cry for help. Let's shift now to something equally critical: lifestyle factors that raise the risk of these strokes, especially for seniors. Number 1. Poor nutrition. You see, what we eat either heals us or harms us. Diets high in processed foods, sugars, and bad fats can raise blood pressure, cholesterol, and clog the carotid arteries, the main highways to the brain. Number 2. Sedentary lifestyle. When we stop moving, everything slows: circulation, metabolism, and mental clarity. Just a 30-minute walk 5 times a week can slash your risk of a mini stroke. And number 3, one we often ignore: stress. Chronic stress raises blood pressure, triggers inflammation, and keeps your body in fight or flight mode. That's no way to age gracefully. I've found peace in daily routines: my morning coffee, gardening, and weekly phone calls with old friends. It's not just about avoiding stroke. It's about living well, even in our later years. Now, before we move on, let me ask you: have you, or someone you know, ever experienced fainting, confusion, or sudden changes in behavior that were brushed off? Drop a comment below. Your story could save someone else's life. And if this video has helped you so far, give it a thumbs up. It's the easiest way to make sure more folks like you get to hear this message. The last thing I want to leave you with is this: don't normalize strange symptoms just because you're aging. Listen to your body. Trust your instincts. We've got one final segment coming up. I'll share how to spot a mini stroke in the moment, and the life-saving tools and tests that every senior and caregiver should know. Stay with me, my friend. We're almost there. Now, let's say something feels off, your face droops, your words tangle, or your vision goes fuzzy. What do? You act fast. That's not just advice. It's an acronym. One that's helped save more lives than I can count. F is for face, ask the person to smile. If one side droops, that's a warning sign. A is for arms, ask them to raise both arms. If one drifts down or doesn't move, take it seriously. S is for speech, have them say something simple. If the words come out slurred or strange, that's your cue. T is for time to call 911. Don't wait. Don't sleep it off. Every second counts. When it comes to a mini stroke, or any transient ischemic attack, time isn't just money. It's brain tissue. I once had a friend, Linda, who ignored her symptoms for a full day. Thought it was dehydration. By the time she got to the hospital, she'd already had a second, more serious stroke. She lost her ability to speak clearly for months. That's why we say, don't guess. Don't Google. Go. Now, when you do get to the hospital, how do they confirm it's a mini stroke? Well, the gold standards are CT scans and MRI for stroke. A CT scan can quickly rule out bleeding in the brain, while an MRI gives a clearer picture of any tissue damage or signs of silent stroke. Some hospitals also perform carotid artery ultrasounds or echocardiograms to check for clots and blockages. These tools help determine whether the blood supply to your brain was ever disrupted. And here's the thing, diagnosing a mini stroke is tricky. Because the symptoms often disappear fast, it's only with these tools that doctors can see what happened. But let's talk about something more empowering now, prevention. Because that's really what this video's about. If you're over 60, or caring for someone who is, there are a few things you can do today that can dramatically reduce your risk. First, control your blood pressure. It's the #1 risk factor for stroke. If you haven't checked it lately, get a reliable blood pressure monitor for the elderly and track it at home. You'd be surprised how much you learn in just a week. Second, manage your cholesterol and blood sugar. This means less sugar, fewer processed foods, and regular checkups. Third, ask your doctor about aspirin alternatives. While aspirin can help prevent clots, it's not for everyone, especially those with a risk of bleeding. There are stroke treatment options designed specifically for seniors, including newer blood thinners and home care plans. And fourth, move your body. Even 20 minutes of gentle balance therapy for seniors a day can improve circulation and brain health. Recovery after a mini stroke depends a lot on how quickly you act and how consistently you manage your health afterward. If needed, ask your doctor about stroke rehabilitation for seniors, which may include cognitive therapy, speech support, or at-home physical therapy. And don't forget the mental side, fear, anxiety, and even mild depression can follow an event like this. That's normal. But you don't have to face it alone. Join support groups. Talk to someone. Even sharing in the comments section of this video could help. I've seen it happen before, someone shares their story, and a stranger replies, "That happened to me too." Before we wrap up, let me say this. Getting older comes with challenges. But it also comes with choices. You get to choose how you respond, how you prepare, and how you protect yourself and your loved ones. If this video has helped you learn something new or helped you feel a little more empowered, do me a favor. Like the video, share it with someone you love, and subscribe if you haven't yet. We're building a community here, one story, one voice, and one lesson at a time. And if you've had a brush with a mini stroke, or you've got a question you've been too shy to ask, leave a comment below. I read every one. Now go take care of that heart and brain of yours. You've only got one of each.